I got into my wife's car and found a tube of personal lubricant in the glove compartment. I didn't say a word. I just secretly replaced it with industrial superglue. And what happened next forced our neighbors to make an emergency call to the fire department. I'm so glad you're here. If you're watching this video, please like and subscribe to my channel and tell me in the comments where you're listening to my story of revenge from. I want to know how far it's traveled. I sat at the kitchen table, the silence in the house as thick as morning fog, a silence that had become a constant unwelcome guest. The old clock on the wall, a wedding gift from my late mother, ticked with a relentless, accusatory rhythm. Each beat a painful reminder of a life I was beginning to suspect was a beautiful, meticulously crafted lie. My wife, Marcia, had just returned from one of her countless business dinners. She looked not merely exhausted, but haunted, as if she carried the weight of a secret too heavy to bear. Her face was a map of fatigue and guilt, lines etched around her eyes and mouth that had never been there before. She tossed her jacket on the sofa with a weariness that felt performative, loosened her scarf as if it were a noose she was desperate to escape, and collapsed onto the bed, the familiar springs groaning under her weight, without even bothering to shower. The faint scent of her expensive perfume hung in the air, but it was mixed with a new alien fragrance, a sweet floral note that felt like an intrusion, a brazen confession from a life I didn't know she was living. A few minutes later, the gentle hum of her snoring filled the house, a sound that once brought me comfort, but now felt like a mocking lullaby. A lullaby for a fool. I got up, moving with the quiet, practiced grace of a husband of 40 years, and began to tidy up the mess she'd left in the living room. Her jacket, her wallet, her cell phone, her old laptop. The phone screen was still on, a new email glowing like a sinister omen. I frowned. Marcia never used email. She always said, "Marcus, all this tech stuff is too complicated. I'd rather just make a call." But now an email. It was right there in plain sight. A digital ghost from a life I didn't know she was leading. Out of a morbid curiosity that felt both wrong and necessary, I opened it. The message was short, a mere handful of words that would shatter my world. "You were incredible tonight, Mom." It was followed by a red heart, a symbol of affection that pierced my own heart with a cold, sharp ache. I froze as if someone had slapped me. The digital world a cruel mirror reflecting a truth I was too terrified to see. "Mom." The word echoed in my mind. Who was calling her that? And in such an intimate, affectionate tone? I swiped down, my thumb trembling, looking for more clues. But there was nothing. Just a strange email address. A jumble of meaningless characters that offered no answers, only more questions. A shiver ran through me, not from cold, but from a profound, bone-deep fear. It felt like a cold wind coming in through a crack in the door of my life, revealing a secret chamber I never knew existed. I glanced at the bedroom and saw Marcia turn over with a sputtering snore, her face still and peaceful, a stark and infuriating contrast to the storm raging inside me. My heart pounded like a thief's, a frantic, guilty beat. I quickly put the phone back, my hand shaking so much I almost dropped it. I continued cleaning up, my movements now mechanical, robotic. I gathered her dirty clothes to take to the laundry. As I checked her pant pockets, I felt a folded piece of paper, crisp and new. It was a receipt from a fancy steakhouse in Birmingham dated that very night. I frowned. Birmingham? She had told me she was meeting her partners in Atlanta. A tiny, bitter laugh escaped my lips. Marcia hated driving to Atlanta. Birmingham, on the other hand, was where her mother had lived before she passed away. She had fond memories there, a fact she had often reminded me of. But who had she had dinner with in Birmingham while lying to me about being in Atlanta? The receipt showed a party of two, a bottle of expensive Cabernet Sauvignon, a wine she had bought me for our 10th anniversary, a wine I had never forgotten, and main courses of filet and pasta. I tried to remember the last time Marcia took me to a place like that. Maybe 10 years ago when I opened my first bakery. It was a memory etched in my mind. The flickering candlelight, her proud smile, the way she toasted my success. Now that memory was a lie, a faded photograph in a scrapbook of deceit. I took out my own phone and, with a silent, determined resolve, snapped a picture of the receipt and the email. I didn't want to believe it, but a husband's intuition, a partner of 40 years' intuition, is a deep, primal knowing. Something was going on, and I had to find out what it was. My hands were trembling, not just with anger, but with a deep existential dread. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, about to witness the spectacular collapse of my entire life. I went to the garage. Marcia's old SUV was still warm, the air thick with the smell of gasoline and that faint sweet perfume from her clothes. I opened the door, a small cold dread gripping my stomach. I turned on my flashlight and checked every corner of the driver's seat. There was nothing out of the ordinary, just some loose change and an empty water bottle. But as I reached into the passenger side glove box, my fingers brushed against something plastic and slippery. I pulled it out and my heart almost stopped. A tube of used personal lubricant with dried residue on the cap. A sticky, damning piece of evidence. I stood there in the dark garage, staring at it as if it were a dirty secret, a tangible manifestation of my worst fears. Marcia and I hadn't been intimate in years. She always said she was tired. That age had sapped her desire. So, what was this lubricant for? The question echoed in my mind, each syllable a hammer blow to my fragile reality. I felt paralyzed, but kept a clear head, a survival instinct kicking in. I put it back exactly where I'd found it. I wiped my hands with a napkin, scrubbing them raw, as if I were afraid the betrayal would leave a permanent mark on my skin. I continued searching, this time more carefully, more methodically. Under the back seat, I found some crumpled napkins, soaked in a sweet floral perfume that wasn't a man's and wasn't my soft, familiar sandalwood cologne. The scent was alien, defiant, a loud, vulgar shout of infidelity in the quiet sanctuary of our garage. I took photos of everything, the lubricant, the napkins, as if I could capture the scent in an image. I closed the car and went back inside, the weight of the evidence pressing down on me, heavier than any flour sack I had ever lifted. I sat at the kitchen table, my hands trembling uncontrollably as I picked up Marcia's phone again. By this point, I was almost certain she was cheating on me. I checked her messages, but there were only work chats, cold and dry, like a desert landscape. Her inbox was empty, except for that one strange email. I checked the sent and draft folders. Nothing. Everything was too clean, too perfect, suspiciously so, as if she had erased every trace of her deception. A master of lies, I thought bitterly. My rage was now a cold, hard stone in my chest, and a new, more dangerous emotion began to stir within me. A desire for truth, a need to expose the lie, no matter the cost. The next morning, just as the sun rose and the soft light filtered through the window curtains, I was already awake, a ghost in my own house. The image of the lubricant, the restaurant receipt, and that email wouldn't stop swirling in my head, a venomous carousel of doubt. I stood in the kitchen, my hands busy, but my mind a frantic whirlwind. I made a simple breakfast, 2 fried eggs, some toast, and a cup of the strong black coffee Marcia liked. I had barely slept all night. Marcia came down looking tired, her hair a mess, and her eyes still groggy. She sat at the table, grabbed her coffee cup, took a sip, and set it down half full. "I have an important meeting today," she said in a husky voice, a rehearsed line she'd used countless times before, without looking me in the eye. "I'm sure I'll be home late." She was so good at this, I thought. The easy lies, the casual tone, it made my blood run cold. I nodded with a strained smile, though all I wanted to do was scream. "Where's the meeting? With whom?" "In Birmingham again." But I held back, my rage a silent fire, and simply replied, "All right, be careful." She got up, gave me a light pat on the shoulder, a gesture that felt more like an afterthought than a sign of affection, and left. The door closed, leaving the kitchen in silence, and me with a suspicion that was growing into a monstrous certainty. I cleared the table and washed the dishes one by one, the rhythm of the task a small anchor in the storm of my emotions. I couldn't just sit there inventing theories. I needed the truth, hard evidence. I picked up my phone and looked for the number for Mrs. Green, a friend from years ago who had helped me so much when I first opened the bakery. She had once told me about a good private investigator who specialized in infidelity cases. "Marcus, if you ever need it, I can give you Carter's number," she had said. He's very discreet and reliable. I never thought I would need to call him, but now I had no other choice. I dialed her number, my voice trembling, each ring a drumbeat of mounting anxiety. Hello, Mrs. Green. Can you help me get in touch with Mr. Carter? I need him. She was silent for a few seconds, a pause that spoke volumes, before answering. Marcus, what's going on? Did Marcia do something? I sighed, not wanting to get into the details over the phone, my pride bruised and raw. I just need to know the truth. Can you help me? Mrs. Green, always a woman of few words but profound intuition, agreed immediately, and just an hour later, I received a message from Carter asking me to meet him at noon at a small cafe downtown. Mr. Roberts, please don't worry. I will help you, he wrote. The message was short, but enough to give me a little relief, a lifeline in a sea of deceit. At noon, I went to the cafe, a tiny place with worn wooden tables and the aroma of roasted coffee filling the air, a scent that usually comforted me, but now felt strangely foreign. I chose a secluded corner where no one would notice me, a shadow in a room full of light. Carter walked in, a middle-aged man, compact and deliberate, with a simple light blue shirt and thoughtful eyes that seemed to read everything, to see through the surface of things. I handed him a flash drive with the photos I had taken the night before, the strange email, the restaurant receipt, the lubricant tube, and the napkins. This is all I have, I said, my voice shaky. I'm not sure, but I think my wife is cheating on me. The words tasted like ash. Carter nodded, reviewing each image on his phone, his face impassive, a professional facade hiding whatever thoughts he had. He carefully made notes in a small notebook. Mr. Roberts, I understand. I'll start following Mrs. Roberts this afternoon. Don't worry, I'll let you know as soon as possible. I looked at him, trying to hold back the tears burning my eyes. Thank you, I said softly. I just want to know the truth, whatever it may be. Carter nodded with a compassionate look, a flicker of understanding in his eyes. I'll do my best. Go home and don't do anything to arouse suspicion. I left the cafe and walked through the crowd, but I felt a loneliness I had never experienced before. 40 years of marriage, a lifetime built on a foundation of trust, was now crumbling beneath my feet. I had put all my trust in Marcia. I always believed she was a family woman, someone who would be with me through any difficulty. She was my rock, my anchor. And now here I was, hiring a stranger to follow my own wife. The irony was a bitter pill to swallow. I felt like I was in a bad movie, a character in a drama I never auditioned for. That night, as I sat in the bakery, the familiar scent of yeast and flour a constant soothing presence. Going over delivery invoices, my phone vibrated. A message from Carter. I opened it, my heart pounding a mile a minute, the blood roaring in my ears. It was a photo of Marcia in the light blue blazer she often wore, entering a fancy restaurant, holding hands with a man. I zoomed in on the image, and my heart stopped. It was Andre, my son-in-law. He was wearing a sharp suit, his hair cut close, his hand intertwined with my wife's like a promise. They didn't look like mother-in-law and son-in-law, but like a couple on a date. Their bodies turned toward each other, a shared secret between them. I sank into my chair, my hand trembling as I held the phone. Andre, how was this possible? At family gatherings, he and Marcia always acted distant, barely speaking to each other. I now realized it was a masterful act, a performance for my benefit and for my daughter Danielle's. Carter sent more photos. In one, they were sitting in a secluded corner, the table decorated with candles and flowers. Marcia was leaning toward him, smiling, and Andre was toasting her glass with an oddly tender gaze. I saw the photo and felt a crushing pain in my chest. In 40 years, I had never seen her look at me with that devotion, not even when we were young. When I was that kid from the South Side who dreamed of owning a bakery, she looked at me with pride. Sure, but not like this. This was worship, and it wasn't mine. In the middle of the night, a video arrived from Carter. The clock on the wall read 2 a.m. I put on my headphones, a desperate attempt to keep the secret contained, and pressed play. My hands so shaky I almost dropped the phone. In the video, Marcia leaned close to Andre's ear, whispering something that made him laugh softly. a sound that was a stranger to me. Her voice sounded warm, her eyes sparkling under the restaurant lights. Then they got up and left, and Andre, ever the gentleman, opened the car door for her as if she were a lady and he were her lover. I replayed the video again and again, a self-inflicted torture. Each time felt like another stab to the heart. Andre, my son-in-law, whom I had treated like my own son, whom I had taught how to dice onions the right way and how to keep a sourdough starter alive. And Marcia, the woman I had given my whole life to, with whom I had built a family. What were they doing behind my back? Behind Danielle's back? The questions were a tidal wave, threatening to drown me. I saved all the photos and the video to a flash drive, making a note of every detail. Date, time, place, even the name of the restaurant. My hands worked on autopilot, but my mind was chaos. I didn't want to believe it. I couldn't believe Marcia and Andre were capable of something so low, so cruel. But the evidence was right in front of me, undeniable, a mountain of proof. I stayed in the bakery among trays of sweet pastries that smelled delicious, but I felt like my world was falling apart. I remembered the early days of the business, when Marcia would help me carry sacks of flour, when we would laugh together in that little kitchen, our dreams as big as the sky. Now it all seemed like a distant memory, a beautiful lie I had lived for too long. The next morning, I was in the small kitchen of the bakery, holding a list of orders for a large hotel downtown. The smell of flour and vanilla, which always brought me peace, felt empty that day, a hollow comfort. As soon as I finished signing the delivery invoice, my phone vibrated in my apron pocket. I wiped my hands, and my heart sank when I saw it was a message from the detective. Just a short sentence. "Mr. Roberts, I'm sending you more evidence." I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm, but my hands trembled as I opened the message. A series of photos appeared on the screen. The first showed Marcia in her usual gray dress, leaving a law office near the main plaza. By her side was Andre in a beige office suit, a cap pulled low over his eyes, and huge dark sunglasses that almost covered his face. A pathetic attempt at anonymity. They were walking very close together, not like in-laws, but like a couple, their bodies a testament to their forbidden bond. In the next photo, they were standing in front of a 4-star hotel with gleaming glass doors and a gold sign. I zoomed in, desperately looking for some sign to deny what I was seeing, but there was nothing. They looked too natural, too comfortable together, a part of a world I was not a part of. Then came a short video from Carter. I pressed play, and my heart pounded so hard I thought it would burst, a frantic drum against my ribs. The shot was from a distance, but it was clear enough to see Marcia and Andre on the 3rd-floor balcony of the hotel. His arm was around her waist, and she was resting her head on his shoulder, her hair moving softly in the wind. And then, like a stab, I saw them share a quick kiss without trying to hide. It was a brief kiss, but enough to burn away the last spark of hope I had left. I replayed the video frame by frame, each image digging deeper into my soul, a slow, agonizing descent into hell. The room curtain opened slightly, and Marcia came out, running to hug Andre. Her face lit up with happiness, as if she were a young girl in love. I slumped into the chair, clutching the edge of the table to keep from falling apart. Carter wrote, "They also rented the room for the afternoon. It looks like they're staying the night. I'll keep an eye on them." I read the message over and over, my throat tight, as if I were being strangled. Just a few hours earlier, Marcia had written to me, "Marcus, I won't be home tonight. I have to meet a potential partner from out of town. Get some rest." The tone was sweet and careful, just as it had been for years. But now I knew it was all a lie, a well-constructed lie. A potential partner from out of town. She wasn't out of town. She was here in a 4-star hotel with our own son-in-law. I opened my portable hard drive and carefully saved every photo and every video. Each time I hit save, I looked at the image as if to make sure I wasn't dreaming. In the video, Marcia's gaze toward Andre was so tender. The way she caressed his cheek reminded me of how she used to touch mine more than 30 years ago. We were young then, full of fire and dreams, and I believed our love would last forever. A promise whispered under the soft glow of a New Orleans summer night. Now, looking at her with him, all I saw were lies and betrayal laid bare. I remembered family gatherings, birthdays, Christmas dinners, Sunday cookouts in the backyard. Everyone laughing, the smell of ribs on the grill, Danielle teasing her mom, and Andre sitting quietly beside her. Back then, I thought he was shy, respectful even. But now I understood. Their silence wasn't discomfort, it was calculation. A cover for something far darker. There was one picture I couldn't stop staring at. The two of them on that balcony. Their bodies so close, their smiles so unguarded. I thought of Danielle, of how she adored her husband. I imagined her face if she ever saw what I was seeing. My stomach twisted. They had betrayed not just me, but her too. My baby girl. I couldn't sit still. The bakery's warm scent of bread and sugar turned sour in my nose. I walked out into the night, past the quiet streets of our neighborhood, where streetlights threw long golden shadows over cracked sidewalks. I could hear dogs barking in the distance, a reminder that life went on even when mine had fallen apart. When I got home, the house felt like a mausoleum. Every picture on the wall mocked me. The smiling faces, the framed wedding photo of Marcia and me dancing at the reception, her head on my shoulder, eyes closed in happiness. I wanted to tear it down, but I didn't. Not yet. I needed that anger to stay focused. The next morning, I woke up before dawn. The light creeping through the blinds painted the room in pale stripes. I made myself coffee so strong it burned my throat. I had one goal now, to gather everything I could. Every lie, every hidden trace. Around 7, Carter messaged me again. Mr. Roberts, I followed them until after midnight. They checked into the hotel under false names. I've got video confirmation. My heart sank even deeper. Thank you. I wrote back, my hand shaking. Please keep me updated. I spent the rest of the morning reviewing the files, hundreds of pictures, snippets of video. I noticed small details, Marcia's necklace, the same one I'd given her on our 20th anniversary, the blue ring on Andre's hand, a family heirloom from his father. They were careless, comfortable, certain they would never be caught. At noon, I went to the storage room behind the bakery, where I kept old boxes of supplies. I needed somewhere to keep my growing pile of evidence. I opened one of the flour sacks and hid a small envelope filled with printed photos inside. No one would ever think to look there. By the time the bakery closed that evening, my mind was set. I wasn't just going to expose them. I was going to make them feel the weight of every sleepless night, every sacrifice, every moment they'd made me question my own worth. That night, I sat across from Marcia at dinner. She looked radiant, too radiant. She was humming as she served herself stew, smiling faintly like a woman in love. I studied her every move. She didn't even notice my silence. "Marcus," she said casually, "I'll be gone again tomorrow night. We have a dinner with a new investor. It's important for the expansion." The words rolled off her tongue with such ease that it almost impressed me. Almost. I nodded. "That's fine," I said quietly. "You've been working hard." She smiled, relieved that I didn't ask questions. That smile cut deeper than any knife. When she went to bed, I stayed in the living room. The house was quiet except for the hum of the fridge. On the table beside me were her car keys, left carelessly next to her purse, the same purse that carried her secrets. I reached for the keys, my pulse quickening. The garage light flicked on, spilling a dim orange glow over the SUV. The smell of leather and faint perfume hit me again, sharp as guilt. I opened the glove compartment, and there it was, the tube of lubricant. Still there, still mocking me. I stared at it for a long time before going to my toolbox in the corner. Inside was a tube of clear industrial superglue, the kind I'd once used to fix a broken chair at the bakery. I held both tubes in my hands, weighing them like fate itself. "Let's see how much pleasure that gets you now," I muttered. I unscrewed the cap of the lubricant, emptied it, and replaced its contents with the glue, squeezing slowly until it was full. I cleaned the edges carefully, made sure it looked exactly the same, then put it back in the glove compartment, in the exact position I'd found it. No trace left behind. When I returned to the house, I washed my hands with lemon soap, scrubbing until the smell of glue and betrayal was gone. My reflection in the window looked like a stranger, an old man who'd loved too much and been fooled too deeply. But beneath the weariness, There was something new in my eyes, resolve. The next morning, Marcia came into the kitchen early, dressed sharper than usual. She had her hair done, lipstick just a shade darker than her usual soft pink. "Marcus," she said, "I might be home late tonight. Don't wait up, all right?" I forced a smile. "Of course. You do what you have to." She smiled back, kissed me on the cheek, and left. The sound of her heels clicking down the porch steps echoed like the final beats of a dying heart. As soon as her car disappeared down the street, I called Carter. "Follow her again," I said. "I have a feeling tonight's the night." "I'm already on it," he replied. I spent the day in the bakery, but my mind was elsewhere. Every sound of the oven, every chime of the bell when a customer walked in felt far away, unreal. My hands kneaded dough automatically, the rhythm of a man going through motions to survive the day. Evening came, and the sky turned deep purple. The bakery lights flickered off one by one. I sat alone at the counter, waiting for the message I knew would come. At 9:42 p.m., my phone buzzed. "Carter again. Mr. Roberts, she's at the same hotel. Room 312. Say, man, they've been inside for about 20 minutes. My jaw clenched. "Keep watching," I wrote back. "I need to know everything." Half an hour later, another message arrived, this time with photos. Marcia and Andre entering the hotel lobby, her hand brushing his back. They were laughing, oblivious to the world, oblivious to me. I sat there in the bakery, staring at the screen until my vision blurred. My heart was racing, but my hands were cold. When I finally stood up, it was with the slow certainty of a man who had already decided what came next. I gathered the evidence into a folder, locked the bakery, and walked home under the dim glow of the streetlights. The night was still. The crickets sang. And somewhere across town, my wife and my son-in-law were sealing their own fate. Tomorrow, I thought, everything will change. When I woke up the next morning, sunlight was spilling through the blinds, warm and golden, but it didn't feel like light. It felt like exposure. Every ray seemed to burn deeper into my chest, illuminating every secret I now carried. Marcia wasn't home. I knew she wouldn't be. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the clock, its steady ticking a cruel reminder that she was probably just waking up in that hotel bed with Andre. My hands clenched into fists. 40 years of loyalty, of shared dreams, of trust, all gone. Around 9, my phone vibrated. It was Carter again. "Mr. Roberts," the message read. "They just checked out. They spent the night together. I'll follow them." My stomach twisted, but I forced myself to stay calm. A part of me needed this, the confirmation, the evidence, the undeniable truth. Carter sent another photo minutes later. Marcia and Andre walking to her car, laughing, her head tilted back, his hand at her waist. The morning sun glinted off her wedding ring, still on her finger, as if mocking me. They looked happy, free, as if the world belonged to them. My jaw ached from how hard I was clenching it. That afternoon, when she finally returned home, she walked in humming. She didn't look guilty. She didn't look nervous. She looked radiant. A woman satisfied, unburdened. "Morning, Marcus," she said, her voice smooth, casual. "How was your night?" "Quiet," I answered, my tone even. "You? Oh, long," she sighed, stretching as she set down her purse. "We met with a potential investor from out of town. It took hours." I nodded, pretending to believe her, while every word she said twisted the knife deeper. She kissed my cheek, and wet a shower. I could hear her singing softly behind the closed door. My hands trembled as I washed the dishes, trying to control the rage that bubbled beneath my skin. She was lying so easily, so confidently. Maybe she thought I was too old, too soft, too naive to notice. She had forgotten who I used to be. The man who built a business from nothing, who knew how to survive when life tried to crush him. When she came out of the shower, dressed in a fresh outfit and smelling of lavender and deceit, she smiled and said, "I'm going to the bakery later. We should talk about expanding to another location." "Sure," I said quietly. "We'll talk." But in my mind, I was already planning something far beyond business. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to her soft breathing beside me. My heart was a drumbeat of rage, echoing in the still darkness. Around midnight, she turned over, mumbling in her sleep, and her phone buzzed on the nightstand. I glanced over. The screen lit up for a second. A message. Can't wait to see you again. Same place next week. And below it, the name Andre. My blood went cold. There was no more doubt. No more pretending. I reached out, unlocked the phone. It opened easily with her fingerprint while she slept, and I scrolled through their messages. Dozens of them, hidden under a fake contact name. Harold Client. I read line after line, my eyes burning. You drive me crazy, Marcia. You're the only one who understands me. I wish I could wake up next to you every day. Each message was another dagger, another betrayal. I took screenshots, saving every last one, and emailed them to myself. When I was done, I carefully set her phone back, exactly where it had been. She didn't stir. I turned off the light and lay there, my mind spinning. I had proof now, enough to destroy them both. But I wanted more than justice. I wanted humiliation. I wanted them to feel what I had felt. Small, powerless, stripped of dignity. The next day, I called Carter again. I need audio proof. I told him. Audio, he asked. Yes. I want to hear them. Together. Talking about me. About what they're doing. Can you do that? There was a pause before he answered. I can, but it'll take a few days. Do it, I said. I'll pay whatever it costs. For the next 2 days, I waited. I worked at the bakery, smiled at customers, kneaded dough, handed out pastries, all while the storm brewed inside me. Every night, Marcia came home with new excuses. Every morning, she left early, pretending to be busy with meetings. I let her. I wanted her to think she was winning. On the third evening, Carter called. His voice was low, careful. Mr. Roberts, I recorded them. You should probably sit down before you listen. I'm listening now, I said, gripping the phone. He sent me a file. I pressed play. At first, it was just the sound of movement, of laughter. Then Marcia's voice came through, soft and intimate. Don't worry, baby. Marcus doesn't know a thing. He's still stuck in his little bakery world. He'd never suspect. Andre's voice followed, low and confident. Good. Once we get those documents signed, the chain is ours. He won't even know what hit him. I felt the blood drain from my face. Marcia laughed, a sound I used to love. He trusts me too much. Poor old man. He still thinks I'm doing all this for us. Andre replied. For us, huh? There was a pause, the sound of a kiss. You mean for me? Marcia giggled. Maybe both. I stopped the recording, my hand trembling. It wasn't just the cheating anymore. They were planning to steal everything I had built, my bakery, my life's work. Every penny I had saved, every contract I had fought for. They wanted it all. For a long moment, I just sat there, staring into the distance. Then, very slowly, a strange calm came over me. I knew what I had to do. I printed out every photo, every message, every transcript from the recording. I labeled each file with the date and time. I put them all in a thick envelope and sealed it. This was my insurance, proof that couldn't be erased or denied. That night, when Marcia came home, she looked radiant again, her cheeks flushed, her hair shining under the porch light. You're still up? She asked, smiling. Couldn't sleep, I said quietly, thinking about the bakery expansion. Her eyes lit up. Oh, good. I've been meaning to tell you. There's this investor who... Don't worry, I interrupted softly. We'll talk about it tomorrow. She nodded, completely unaware that I already knew everything. After she went to bed, I sat in the living room, the envelope of evidence beside me. I could hear her gentle snores from down the hall. So peaceful, so innocent, like she hadn't just destroyed the man who'd built her world. I got up, walked to the bedroom doorway, and looked at her one last time. The woman I had loved for most of my life. The woman who was now my enemy. You shouldn't have crossed me, Marcia, I whispered. Then I turned off the light and began planning exactly how I would make them both pay. The next morning, I woke early, feeling an eerie calm settle over me. Marcia was in the kitchen, making breakfast as if nothing had happened. She smiled when I walked in. "Morning, honey," she said. "Eggs and toast." I smiled back, the kind of smile that hides a storm. "Sure," I said. "Eggs sound good." She had no idea what was coming. I looked at the clock on the wall. Carter was probably already preparing the next step, as we discussed late the night before. The trap was set, and soon enough, the whole world would know exactly who Marcia Roberts really was. The morning I set the final pieces in motion, the house felt colder than usual, like it had taken on the color of my mood. I moved with a kind of surgical calm that surprised me. My hands steady, my breathing measured. I had rehearsed this sequence in my head 100 times, each step arranged so nothing could go wrong. There was no room for mistakes. After 40 years of giving everything to bake, to build, to love, I had one chance to take back what was mine. I tied the thin string to the stove's igniter like a man who'd once fixed ovens for a living, then ran it over to the window and attached the other end to an old coffee can, heavy enough to pull and trigger the spark from a distance. The skillet of oil I left on the burner was small, just enough to produce a controlled smoke, a trap designed not to burn the house down, but to force a commotion big enough to bring the fire department to our door. I didn't want anyone hurt. I wanted truth exposed and shame delivered. Before I left, I walked through the house one last time. The recorder I'd hidden earlier behind the bookshelf was still blinking, the tiny red light a smug pulse of confirmation. I tucked the folder with all the printed evidence into my coat, photos, emails, transcripts, a lifetime of betrayal printed in ink. I slipped 2 small tubes of mustard into my pocket, the thick kind I'd bought weeks ago and kept cold in the bakery fridge. They felt ridiculous and necessary both at once, like a theater prop for the final act. At Mrs. Peterson's kitchen window across the street, I took a seat and pretended to be a worried neighbor. She poured me coffee and asked a dozen questions I answered only half of. Around 10, a taxi pulled up and Marcia stepped out in a light floral dress, sunglasses pulled down as if hiding from the morning. Andre followed, playing the part of the attentive companion. They didn't glance my way. Lucky them. They'd grown careless. Through my headphones, the recorder carried their voices into my ears. Laughter, a whisper, the rustling of fabric. When they came in, they moved with the quiet confidence of people who believe themselves untouchable. My stomach tightened as the bed creaked softly over and over. I waited. Then I pulled the string. The skillet caught. The smoke billowed out in thick spirals, like an announcement. I felt a peculiar calm as the house filled with choking fumes. Mrs. Peterson gasped and called out, "Marcus, your house." The neighborhood stirred. Phones came out. Someone shouted to call the fire department. It was a small, perfectly ugly panic, a stage set for what I intended to reveal. I stayed seated with my coffee, playing the role of the stunned wife's friend, while the app on my phone fed me the live sound of chaos inside my own home. Allison's no. Andre's voice rose in panic. Marcia's screams translated poorly over the tiny microphone, fear breaking the lilting cadence I'd heard so many times before. "We're stuck," she cried, voice splitting. "It's stuck." The sound mocked me and warmed me both. From the porch across the way, I saw the fire truck tear up the street, lights flashing, and my heart thudded. Daniel, in his uniform as captain, leapt from the cab, boots thudding, serious and professional. The sight of my son charging forward like that was almost enough to stop everything. For a second I thought I might call out, "Stop this madness. Tell him to turn back." But there was no turning back. Not now. They broke down the door. The entry was a flurry of movement. Hoses unrolled, commands barked, sirens blurred. Through the headset, muffled by the activity, I could hear the shouted order. "Clear the area. We've got potential victims." I told myself to breathe. The recorder picked up the frantic sounds of someone trying to pull apart a body, of gasps, then a strangled cry of laughter that was not laughter at all. When Daniel reached the bedroom, I closed my eyes and let the sound find me. "Chief, what is this?" I heard him ask, voice tight. A firefighter nearby muttered something incredulous. "Oh my God!" I could picture it, my son seeing them, finding them, dad and son-in-law together in a scene that would shred anything left of my former life. Shame moved faster than any siren. It landed on the neighborhood like a physical thing. The fire crew worked professionally. They wrapped thin sheets around them, carried Julian, no, Marcia, and Andre out, each bundled and pale, faces twisted from pain and humiliation. People were already gathering on the sidewalk, the slow, sticky crowd that swarms for spectacle. Mrs. Peterson stood beside me, phone in hand, tears in her eyes. "Oh, Marcus," she whispered, the word a small explosion of pity. I let her lean on me like any good neighbor would. Down the street, people whispered, "What a disgrace." Daniel stood a few feet away, shoulders hunched, jaw tight. There was a hollow in his eyes I recognized from nights on long deliveries, an exhaustion that had nothing to do with work. He didn't look at me. He didn't need to. He was busy playing the prop that the world expected, the son who leads, the son betrayed. I watched him take off his helmet, the way he always did when a job was done, and what I felt was a strange mix of pride and an ache that cut deeper than the smoke had. After the ambulance and the hush of the crowd, they moved Marcia and Andre to stretchers and into the emergency vehicle. The paramedics worked quickly, strip away, rinse, apply ointments. I sat with my evidence in hand, feeling oddly light. It wasn't relief. It was a cold, competent satisfaction, the kind you get when everything lines up as planned. Hours later, in the antiseptic fluorescent hallway of the hospital, a doctor found me and said in a low voice, "We managed to separate them. They'll be fine, just some skin irritation." He handed me 2 small tubes of a neutral ointment for their burns. My fingers closed around them like a thief's. I nodded, the practiced expression of someone who cares, someone disappointed by life's cruelties. I thought about the 2 tubes of mustard in my pocket, how I'd swapped them with the ointment while the nurse's back was turned. It was petty. It was theatrical. It was perfect. I walked into the room with a face made of sympathy. Marcia lay on the bed, hair matted, eyes swollen with tears and shock. Andre looked bewildered, his hand bandaged. "Julia, Marcus, please," she sobbed when she saw me, the sound thin and urgent. I put the tube of ointment on the bedside table and walked out. It took a little while, but the mustard did its work, burning, stinging, the kind of pain that is loud, public, and unforgettable. Her screams tore down the corridor. Andre's curses filled the room like thick smoke. People left their meals and their phone calls to come see the spectacle of wrongdoers being punished. By midday, someone had posted a video that Mrs. Peterson had taken, and the hospital's quiet hallway turned into a chorus of whispers and pointed fingers. Within hours, the news had spread like icing on a fresh cake. The bakery's regulars, the folks who'd once praised my flan, gathered in clusters outside, talking in low voices about how such a thing could happen here in our quiet street. Some said it was God's justice. Some said it was cruel. I kept my head bowed, moving in the middle of the storm like a man who had done what he had to do. When Daniel returned home that evening, he did not speak much. He gave me an envelope of documents I had left with him, the printed evidence, the notes, the divorce papers I had prepared months before when anger had grown sharper and more cunning. His eyes were wet. He handed them to me without ceremony. "Mom," he started, but then stopped. He sat in a chair, hollow and tired, and simply let himself cry for a long time. I watched him and felt a new kind of grief settle into my bones. I had taken back my life, yes, but the cost, how much it had taken from my son, from myself, was not negligible. There are victories that feel like losses, and this was one of them. Still, as the days unfolded, sympathy poured over me in surprising ways. People came to the bakery more than ever. They brought casseroles, small gifts, and kind words. "You handled this with strength," Mrs. Peterson told me, offering a paper bag of flan. "You protected what was yours." I tasted nothing of the praise. What I felt instead was a fragile, stubborn sense of survival. I had rid myself of the rot that threatened the bakery, the family, my years of dedication. The oven's heat felt honest again, and when Daniel and I worked together the next morning, kneading, folding, counting receipts, we were 2 people trying to patch a life that had been ripped open. The scandal would follow them for years, Jenny's whispers at the church, the gossip in the grocery aisle, the cruel memes that threaded through our little town. But I had my evidence, my freedom, and the bakery. And that night, as I closed up, I sat at the back table and, for the first time in months, let myself breathe. The air was thick with the sweet smell of caramel and victory, and a sorrow that I could never wholly wash away. A few weeks after the hospital chaos, everything in town had changed. Yet somehow, nothing had. Life went on. The sun rose over the same rooftops, the mail came on time, and the ovens in my bakery still roared to life before dawn. But beneath that calm surface, a quiet ripple of gossip and pity followed me everywhere I went. People whispered my name in the grocery store line, in church pews, at the farmer's market. Marcus Roberts, the man whose wife ran off with his son-in-law, the man who didn't burn the house down, just their dignity. Oddly enough, business was better than ever. Every day the bell over the bakery door rang non-stop. Folks came in not just for pastries, but for a glimpse of me, the man who'd survived public betrayal with what they called grace. Mrs. Peterson came by every morning for her cornbread muffins. "Marcus, you're stronger than any of us thought," she said one day, handing me a folded newspaper clipping. "You handled it like a saint." I smiled, because that's what people wanted to see. But deep down I knew better. Saints forgive. I hadn't forgiven. I'd simply finished the story my own way. The bakery smelled of butter, cinnamon, and new beginnings. My son Daniel had moved back home after everything. He didn't talk much about what had happened, but his presence filled the empty spaces Marcia had left behind. The first morning he came to help. He showed up early, hair still wet from the shower, wearing his old work boots. "Morning, Pops," he said softly, as though testing the word. "Need me to handle deliveries?" I looked at him, the same strong jaw as mine, the same steady eyes, and nodded. "Yeah, let's get started." We fell into an easy rhythm, the kind that only comes when you've both been through hell and come back with your hands still steady. He handled the front counter while I worked the ovens. Customers greeted him with sympathetic smiles, and he met each one with quiet politeness. But when the door closed and the shop was empty, silence filled the room like fog. Sometimes I'd glance up and find him staring at nothing, lost in thought. Once, late at night, I found him sitting at the kitchen table, a glass of whiskey untouched before him. "You can talk to me, son," I said gently. He sighed, his voice rough. "I just can't believe it, Dad. Mom and Andre. It's like my whole life was a lie." I put a hand on his shoulder. "I know, but we're still here. We'll rebuild." He nodded, though his eyes were far away. That's how grief works. It doesn't end. It just settles in quieter corners. The bakery became our therapy. Every loaf we baked, every order we filled, was another layer of healing. Soon Daniel began making suggestions about new recipes, experimenting with flavors. "We should add sweet potato pie to the menu," he said one morning, his voice steadier. "Customers keep asking for it." "Sweet potato pie, huh?" I grinned. "That's your mama's favorite." He hesitated, then shrugged. "Yeah, but we'll make it better." And we did. We made everything better, stronger, richer, more honest. Sundays became our ritual. We'd open late, share breakfast, and talk about small things. Sometimes he'd ask about the old days, how I met his mother, how I started the bakery. I answered truthfully, but carefully. I didn't want hatred to grow where love had once lived, even if that love had curdled into something poisonous. "Your mom wasn't always like this," I told him once. "She stood beside me when I had nothing." People change, son. Sometimes love doesn't die, it just forgets itself. He nodded silently, and I could tell he was trying to make peace with that idea. Around town, people started seeing me differently. I wasn't just the baker anymore. I was the man who'd been wronged but endured. I was invited to speak at a local business meeting about resilience. Me, a man who'd glued his wife's secret life shut. I accepted, of course. I spoke about building trust, about standing back up when everything crumbles. No one in that room knew how little my story really was. Still, in the quiet hours before dawn, when the ovens hummed and the city was still asleep, I sometimes caught myself thinking about Marcia. I imagined her face, pale and humiliated under hospital lights. I wondered where she was now. Rumor had it she'd left town with Andre not long after their release. Some said they tried to start over in another city. Others said they split once the money ran out. I never checked. I didn't need to. Whatever happened to them wasn't my concern anymore. What was mine was right here. The bakery, the smell of warm dough, the steady sound of my son's footsteps behind me. One evening, as we were cleaning up, Daniel broke the quiet. "Dad," he said, "I've been thinking, maybe we should rename the bakery." "Rename it?" I raised an eyebrow. "Yeah," he said, wiping flour from his hands. "Roberts and Son. New name, new chapter." For the first time in months, I felt my chest loosen, just a little. "Roberts and Son," I repeated. "I like that." He smiled faintly. Then it settled. That night, I stayed behind after he'd gone to bed. The ovens had cooled, the lights dimmed. I took the old framed photo from the wall, the one of me and Marcia on the bakery's opening day. We were younger, laughing, covered in flour. For a moment, I almost felt that same joy again. Then I turned the frame over, slid out the photo, and placed it face down in the trash. I didn't tear it. I just let it go. Weeks passed, and the town's gossip shifted to new scandals, new distractions. My story faded into rumor, half remembered and exaggerated. But every now and then, a new customer would come in, eyes shining with recognition. "You're that Marcus Roberts, right?" They'd whisper. "The one from that story?" I'd smile politely and say, "I'm the baker." And that was all they needed to know. The days became peaceful again. The pain dulled into something bearable. Daniel laughed more now, the sound genuine, not forced. One Saturday evening, as we closed shop, he said, "Dad, do you think you'll ever, love again?" I wiped my hands on a towel and thought for a long moment. "Maybe," I said finally. "But love's got to be honest this time. Otherwise it's just sugar that looks sweet and burns when it melts." He chuckled softly. "You always talk like a poet. You know that?" I smiled. Bakers and poets aren't too different. We both measure, mix, and pray it rises. That night, lying in bed, I listened to the quiet hum of the house. It didn't feel empty anymore. It felt mine again. For the first time since everything happened, I slept deeply. No nightmares, no bitterness, just the steady rhythm of a man who had survived the fire and walked out clean. Months later, a letter arrived in the mail. No return address, just my name written in familiar handwriting. I hesitated before opening it. Inside was a single note on plain white paper. "Marcus, I know you'll never forgive me. I don't ask you to. I just wanted to say that I understand now what I destroyed. I hope you find peace." Marcia, I folded it carefully, placed it in the back of an old ledger, and said quietly to no one, "I already did." From that day forward, I stopped thinking about revenge or justice. I baked, I worked, I lived. The bakery flourished. Daniel eventually took over deliveries completely and even started teaching kids from the neighborhood how to bake. Seeing him laugh with them, I realized something simple and true. Destruction can clear the ground for something better to grow. On the 1-year anniversary of everything, I unlocked the bakery before sunrise. The city was still asleep, streets glistening with dew. I brewed coffee, turned on the ovens, and watched the first light spill across the flour-dusted counter. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't haunted by the past. I was grateful for it, because it had stripped me of illusion, burned away the lies, and left only what was real. I stepped outside, breathed in the crisp morning air, and looked up at the new sign Daniel had hung over the door, "Roberts and Son Bakery." The letters gleamed gold in the light. I smiled. "Welcome home," I whispered to myself, "to the bakery, to the life I'd rebuilt from ashes." And that, I suppose, is the real story. Did you like my story? Tell me in the comments where you're listening from. If you enjoyed it, subscribe for more stories of life, love, and the messy beauty of second chances. Thank you for sharing this moment with me. Until next time, this is Marcus Roberts signing off, with love and respect.